one of the hardest things for me to do is actually put the restraints on. And vision has restraints. When you have vision, it's kind of like you can't just do anything. You have the restraints. And so you know where you want to go. You know what you want to do. I have to take stock in what has God called me to do, and what can my family and what can I personally handle emotionally, physically, spiritually, and all the above.
A pastor turned tech leader and a millennial churchgoer explore the intersection of technology, culture, and faith, equipping you with innovative strategies to support you as you live out your calling, lead your churches with confidence, and step into the future together. This is the Give It Up Podcast. What's up, guys, and welcome back to another Give It Up podcast episode, or should we say aloha, because today our guest is coming live from the islands of Hawaii to us. And Vance, this is your friend, so I want you to give the formal introduction here.
Oh my goodness, it's an honor to be able to call him friend, Pastor Mike Kai. I've actually looked up to Pastor Mike from afar for years, just being one of the innovators, one of the what I would call entrepreneurial pastors of our day, which we're going to talk a little bit about that. But obviously the incredible pastor, I call him Bishop of Hawaii, but lead pastor of Inspired Church, along with Pastor Lisa and just their family leading so well on the island and really beyond, because Pastor Mike is not only just a pastor, but a podcaster. He is also a world-renowned author, a church planner. It's really Inspired Church as a movement of churches, as well as businessman. And maybe some people don't know that about Pastor Mike, but he is a prolific business person as well. And we're going to talk about all the things. But Pastor Mike, thank you for being on the Give It Up podcast.
Hey, Vance, Zoe, it is such a privilege and an honor to be with you guys. I love this podcast. Listened to a few shows already, and it's already subscribed to it, and I really love it. So thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be in such rarefied air with you guys.
I love it. Rarefied air. Let's talk about some rare topics that I don't think oftentimes get airtime when people are talking about church building. And I want to dive in with you on it because I consider you one of the pioneers in our modern day of what this looks like. But this is not unbiblical. I mean, we know that Paul was a tent maker. He was actually a business person. He was entrepreneurial. And, I've seen you be what I would consider, like I said, an entrepreneurial pastor, and having so many different streams and organizations and even philanthropic initiatives. How do you balance it all? What's your even just mindset of why you even approached ministry from this lens?
Great question, Vance. I would say that the way that I balance it all is I have an incredible team. I have so many ideas, so much vision, and sometimes it's hard to keep up with that. And you don't want to keep adding new things, new plates to spin, and doing all that those kinds of things. But I believe that the parable of the talents kind of drives a lot of it. You were either born with it or you learn it, and so I believe that I was born with maybe a bit. And for the church world, those guys who are church leaders who are listening to this, I was probably born into a 2-talent situation with 5-talent potential. So 2 talents, average kid, average athlete, got to become more than that. You got to hustle. You got to go to clinics. You got to practice every single day outside in your garage, shooting hoops or trying to catch a football or whatever. 2 talent, not tall. 2 talent, 5-talent potential. Story of my life. I've been in a 1-talent situation, doing basically by means of my own mistakes. But then also God always turns it around. He takes 2, makes it 4. Takes 4, makes it 8. And so I believe the capacity that me and my team have grown into is not something that I believe I could have accepted. If someone said, here, Mike, now you will take over this multi-million-dollar organization that someone else built. I don't know if I could do that because we had to grow into it. I'm looking at my camera guys and all these guys in the studio, and we all had to grow into it. And so it's growing into it. How do we balance it? Well, you go on a wilderness hike for 4 days, like I told you earlier. You get off the grid. There's no phone reception. And then it's just you alone with your thoughts on a hike. And it's crazy, but it was brutal, but brutal at the same time.
My goodness. I mean, what's so interesting about this is you're highlighting how important it is to honor the current season that you're in. So if you're going to grow in your capacity, how are you stewarding what you have right now? So if you started with 2, stop looking at 4, honor the 2 and watch how God grows that. But let's even go deeper than that, or even a prerequisite to that. How does a pastor know? How does even a church leader, a senior church leader know if they should even go on that entrepreneurial path? Is that for everybody, or is that only for certain people? What's your take?
That's a great question. I would say it could be for everybody, but not everybody is like this. They can be, though. For example, I would think that pastors, number one, have some of the best content out there, period. Because every single week we have to come up with 1, maybe 2 messages minimum. So you're always studying, always gathering, you're collecting information, you're categorizing them, you're cataloging them. You're doing what Solomon did in the book of Ecclesiastes. He categorized them, he cataloged them, and he put them on the side when he talked about the great teacher. So we have the best content. But I also think, even though we might have the best content, we don't necessarily know how to package it, because we're not necessarily self-promoters. So we have a difficult time. Most guys have a difficult time with that, because they just don't know how to package it. So we learn from other people. But when it comes to the question about can everybody do this, I would say a good sign of someone that is an entrepreneur, or I would like to call it, maybe in the church world, apostolic. Yeah. You're always starting something. And if you've gone from 1 campus to 2, if you've gone from 2 to 5, if you started a preschool, if you started, some kind of business, chances are that pastor has an entrepreneurial gift in them that the church world would call apostolic. And so I think some people can, most can. I think they can. I think it's also cultivated. And for me, it came from my upbringing, from my dad. So I just watched him and kind of took my cues from that.
I love that. As you're speaking and you're talking about all these ideas that are in your head all the time, and right. I would love to know, because I know that there's a lot of people listening who feel this exact same way. How do you know which ideas to actually pursue versus put in the pocket, maybe save for later, or abandon altogether?
That's a great question, because I ask myself that question all the time. And Vance is sometimes feeding me stuff. Hey, you need to do this, and we got all these different friends, and if I could do them all, I would. But I think in fact, I probably will. I'll probably do them all, because they're all great ideas. It's all about what season am I in, what capacity can my team handle. What can Lisa and I do? I've got 3 girls, 3 daughters, 2 of them are married, got 1 more left in the house. And so it's a season where I want to do as much as I can do. However, I want to spend as much time with her that I can before she graduates next year and goes off to college. And so Those are the things that we're weighing now, later, or maybe someone else on the team can pick that up and maybe they can do it. And sometimes one of the hardest things for me to do is actually put the restraints on. And vision has restraints. When there's restraints to a vision. So when you have vision, it's kind of like you can't just do anything. You have the restraints. And so you know where you want to go. You know what you want to do. And so if I'm doing too many things and I'm muddying my vision, and I'm really, at the end of the day, I have to take stock in what has God called me to do, and what can my family and what can I personally handle emotionally, physically, spiritually, and all the above. So I would say that, Zoe, I'd love to do it all, because all good things come across the desk. But it has to be, forgive the expression, it's got to be like a heck yeah eventually. You know what I mean? Heck totally.
Yeah. And I think you have that heck yeah. I mean, we say this, your no actually empowers your yes. Mm-hmm. Or, for the purposes of this conversation, your no empowers your heck yeah. And, yes. I think that's powerful. One thing I've really admired about you, Pastor Mike, is, and you said it, you are a leader first. And so you entrust a lot to your team. And I've seen situations where you've wanted to do something, or even know you're going to do something, but you really empower your team. What is that balance? What's the balance of when you make an executive decision and say, hey, team, this is what we're doing, versus, hey, I'm going to run it through the process because I know that the speed of the vision is also determined by the speed of the team?
Great question, Vance, because when you're great at this. I mean, you must, as a venture capitalist, you must get so many people with a pitch deck. I got a pitch deck for you, Vance.
Yeah.
And you have to look through that pitch deck, but then you can't look through them all. They have to kind of go through a filtering system, and
Yes.
which ones say, hey, Vance, you really need to look at this one. Okay, I'll look at that. It's kind of the same way. It's the same concept that I have to go through, where I have to train my team to be able to make some decisions and run them through me if I really need to know what's going on. But there is a risk to that. There's a risk of them making the wrong decision. There's a risk of maybe I missed an opportunity. There's all kinds of risks involved. But if I become, as we know, John Maxwell, we love him. We've spent time with him. It's the law of the lid. And what could happen is not only is there a lid on someone else's potential, but it's a lid. I could be the lid. Can I be the lid? Because if everything's got to pass through Mike eventually, or Lisa, I could be the lid. And so sometimes to remove the lid, I have to empower them to, forgive the expression, but to maybe think like me, think the way that I would think. Of course, think like Jesus, but think the way that I would think and how I would process and how I would make a decision. And then we debrief that and make sure that, what were you thinking? Sometimes, what were you thinking? And sometimes it was like, were you even thinking? And then the other times it's like, man, that's good thinking. I'm glad you thought that way.
So powerful. Don't tell me what to do. Teach me how to think.
Yes.
Right? Even Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ. But he said, imitate me for a reason. But actually, Philippians 3:17 goes on to say, imitate me and others who are also following the example of us.
Wow.
And so what's so interesting is that it seems that by design, the Bible teaches us that, yes, we need to fix our eyes on Jesus, but he offers up examples, not for greater authority, but for maybe greater inspiration. Yes. Because Paul knew that, he wasn't going to live in Palo Alto. Paul knew he wasn't going to live in Honolulu, right? So it's not just follow me, but it's follow, and that's what you're saying is like, okay, I am training a team to not just do what I say, to think how I think so that we can start lifting lids. That's powerful.
Right. Yeah. Most of us, including myself, we were probably not first round draft picks.
Wow.
We were seventh rounders, in the eighth round. We a team full of Mr. Irrelevance. One of the highest compliments a consultant paid me. He said this to me. He says, Mike, I cannot believe the church that you and Lisa have grown. I can't believe that you've led this. I can't believe it. And I was going to finish his sentence because I knew where he was going. He said, without any other preaching guns. This is what he told me. And I said, you know what? I know where you're coming from. I know exactly what you're saying. And you know what? I prided myself. It's kind of like the Miami Heat right now. I got a jersey. I bought it in Miami, Vance. I should wear it. Miami, those guys are undrafted. Those guys are undrafted. And all of those guys, they're going to play in the NBA Finals. They just got Jimmy Buckets.
Jimmy Buckets, baby.
I mean, so sorry about Bob Myers. So sorry about that's my team. My team is the Golden State Warriors even before Steph Curry was on that team.
So you're talking about Baron Davis. You're talking about Baron Davis.
I'm talking Baron Davis. I'm talking about Run TMC. Run TMC. That's old school. Right? Someone running who's Run TMC. He's got it wrong. It's Run DMC. No. It was Timmy, it was Mitch, and it was what's his name? The lefty. Who's the lefty? Chris Mullen. Run TMC. That was the team.
Oh, but, so you're old school. You're before the bandwagon.
Oh, I might look young, but I'm older. Just kidding. It's the Filipino blood, Vance.
Hey, it's in there. It's in there. I see it.
It's there. It's a quarter. There's 1/4, and
that's all you need, Pastor Mike. That's all you need.
Yeah, I love it. So those people listening on your podcast are like, these are two Filipino boys. Yes, we are. Yeah, yes, we are.
We out here. We're leading. Come on.
Yes, we are. And so, if I look at the Miami Heat. And if you look at, you probably have only one, you really got one star player, and that's Jimmy Butler. and then you have great teammates and a great coach and a great system. When you have that, man, I tell you what, you don't have to be a first round draft pick. You can be a 7th round, 3rd round. It doesn't matter. It's teamwork. I heard one of the greatest books, John Maxwell. I'm quoting
By the
John
way,
Maxwell.
before you say that, Pastor Mike, I need to emphasize this point. The coach of the Heat is Filipino, right?
Yes, he is.
Okay, let's just agree on
Let's
that.
get it, Filipino podcast. Welcome.
I'm changing the name. Name. We're getting new neon lights. Okay, so
Pinoy power. Let's go.
Yeah. But John Maxwell, you were saying?
Yeah, John Maxwell. One of the first books that I read. Okay, John Maxwell had like the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. 17 indispensable. I mean, incredible, right? Developing the leader within you, developing the leader around you, developing the leaders of whatever, developing every single leader. The greatest book I ever read from John Maxwell was when I started a church in 2001, and a friend gave me this book, and it was called Partners in Prayer. And I said, oh, dude, this guy's going to ask me to be my prayer partner? I don't know. I don't know if I want to be my prayer partner, And so he gave me a book called Partners in Prayer, John Maxwell. And I began to read the book, and one of the greatest principles I got out of that book was not only the power of prayer, that's important, but unity. That unity was so critical. And I tie that book by John Maxwell, The Partners in Prayer, about unity and how critical that is, with Patrick Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And when you look at one of the dysfunctions was disunity. He said, I put in a room all these Harvard MBAs against these other guys that just had regular degrees and put them together. The MBAs, for some reason, could not get it done. But the ones, nothing wrong with an MBA, you got to get one if you need one. But the other guys who were of average talent, but they had unity and the other team didn't. And the one that had the unity, the teamwork, went further than the guys with the MBAs. I think that's a lot of us. A lot of businesses are like that. I think a lot of churches are like that. And so, that's what I was thinking for the moment when we got off on the Filipino thing.
So good.
One of the things that you're talking about has made me realize that you are an investor, and not just financially investing in companies, you invest in people. And I know that a lot of that has to do with because of so many people investing in you growing up. But, I'm thinking about how you're an investor, and then also you're getting this book on prayer. And I also know that you're an early investor in pray.com, right?
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear about how you decided to invest in this company and how prayer actually became a very important thing for you in just outside of your prayer life.
Yeah, and I want to couple that with Pastor Mike as you answered that. Tell us about that situation, but then zoom out to how do you underwrite these opportunities? How do you evaluate and assess these deals, these opportunities that you pursue, whether it's financial or with your time and resources? I think this is going to help a lot of our listeners.
Okay. Yeah. So with Pray.com came along, if you look at the banks, you're not getting a lot of money. You're not getting a great interest rate. You have a stock market. You can get into that. And stock markets can be challenging as well with the market. You can never predict the market. And so what happened was Matt Potter, the founder of Pray.com, got in contact with me, came to Hawaii and spoke at our conference and talked about the app. I loved the concept of the app. And one thing that I knew was we needed to galvanize our church around prayer. If we could get them all together around prayer, I think we're going to be okay. And so when he offered up this opportunity to invest 6 figures in kind of a mid-level 6-figure range, we brought it to our council. We brought it to our board and said, guys, listen, we got money sitting in the bank. It's actually losing interest because of inflation or whatever the rate of inflation it is. It's sitting idle, doing nothing. It is not earning anything. We either need to find a harder asset like land, but we need it to be somewhat liquid. If we need it in case we build a new building, we buy a new building. And so when Matt from Pray.com approached us and flew us up to LA and come see the operation, because we had to have eyes on it before we'd put all that kind of money into it, it actually opened up a whole new opportunity for us to look at an investment portfolio for the church that was also, in line with the Federal Trade Commission to make sure that we had an investment committee. So it wasn't just me making deals with with good opportunities with new friends. It was
Smart.
me having an investment committee. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was an investment committee that would make the recommendation to the board, and then the final vote would be with the board. And so that means you have many eyes on this. It's not just one person having a passion or a whim on something that they believe is going to be a winner. And so that's how we did it. That's how we vetted through it. So our investment portfolio does include crypto, stocks, bonds, property, and as well as shares in different companies.
It's incredible. And I think that's so helpful, insightful, and wisdom, the way that you all had structured it, right? It's probably biblical too. I mean, isn't there a passage, Pastor Mike, around even with the prophetic, right? Certain prophetic words need to be confirmed.
Right. Right.
Right. And so in the same way, you take these biblical principles, you apply it to business, and there's wisdom in that.
It's still Matthew chapter 25, Vance. It still goes back to the parable of the talents. Remember the guy that buried his talent?
Yep.
He buried it. And Jesus told him, you could have at least put it in the bank where it could have earned interest.
Yeah.
Right? At the very least, you could have earned some interest. And so it's taking and multiplying what God gave you, and then having a level of liquidity. And when you need it, then you pull it out, and then you end up, buying the asset or paying off the asset. And so I didn't grow up like this. I was kind of trained like this, and I picked it up along the way. So yeah, good stuff.
It's brilliant. So I want to go off script a little bit because you're sparking so many ideas for me. And this is a podcast that aims to bridge the gap between technology and the local church. What are you excited about right now, Pastor Mike? Because I consider you an innovative pastor. I consider you somebody that's always pioneering, always wanting to be on the cutting edge, early into things, early adopting, things like that. Are you reading stuff on AI right now? Are you thinking about the applications for that in the church? Are you still focused on blockchain and crypto? Like what are you reading about? What are you on the forefront of right now as it relates to applying innovative things to the church space?
Yeah, great question. To some degree, I always feel like I'm not ahead of the curve, but a little bit behind the curve, but definitely not at the bottom of the bell curve or the sigmoid.
Good.
I'm definitely not at the bottom. What I think is AI, what I've gathered enough information to have a decent opinion on artificial intelligence, and this is what I want to say. Man, now anybody can write a sermon on AI. That Chat GPT, you just put in, and that's like, I'm going to have to question everybody from this moment on. Did you come up with that, or did Chat GPT give that to you? And that's the only thing. I mean, I see this technology as being, light, like landing on the moon.
Wow.
But I'm not really excited about it, to be honest with you. I'm concerned that it could create jobs, number one, but probably remove more jobs and create.
Oh yeah.
I'm not an economist, but just by reading what I've read. The other part is there's going to be a lack of originality. I think it's going to remove a heart from a piece of paper. I believe that it is artificial, and it's going to sound beautiful. I think people are going to be writing books to ChatGPT. I don't think it's going to be as authentic as it could be. So even though I'm a little concerned about it, how do you maximize it rather than calling it evil or not good, or at the worst evil, or at the other part disingenuous? How do you do that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I would like to leverage it at the same time to be able to do what we need to do, but I want to be very, very careful in that space until I get some good counsel on that. Vance, you'd probably have good counsel for me offline as well. And I would love to know what you guys think though about AI, because you guys, this is your area. This is your podcast.
My insight from what you just said is this. I think there's a lot of wisdom in identifying, hey, I'm not an early adopter, but I'm definitely not at the end of the bell curve. I allow other industry experts to maybe forge a way and to make the mistakes, and I learn from that mistakes, and then I move forward in strength for my context. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Our take in AI, we actually talk about it probably every other episode, Hanzo, on the Give It Up podcast, because it's just, it's kind of like, 10 years ago, Andreessen Horowitz, one of the most famous investors, wrote this article, Software is Eating the World. It seems like we're at another inflection point where AI is eating the world, just in terms of like the water cooler talk and things like that. I do believe what you just said is true, that it's going to displace a ton of jobs. I think it's going to displace a lot of knowledge work that can just be done by AI. You just think about accountants, you think about people that do financial models, you even just think about remedial legal steps and incorporation documents, and all of that can be learned through a corpus of data and just be done in a tenth of the time and probably more accurate through AI. So a lot of knowledge work is going to be displaced. My optimistic view is this, is that because we're going to be able to do a lot of the lower level tasks automatically and easily, it's going to free up humanity to solve bigger problems.
Okay.
Right. And so I actually think that those people that are going to be displaced, they have a choice. They either can go into areas where jobs are not being displaced. So, for example, a landscaper, for example, there's certain service industry jobs that can't be replaced by AI today, until we get to the Terminator stage of robots, but we're not there yet. And so there's a choice. You can either go that route, or you can actually go the entrepreneurial route, and you can leverage this baseline. So think of all the app ideas that you have in your brain, Pastor Mike, but you're limited because you don't have enough coders to be able to build the app that you want to build in your brain. AI can just code it for you now. And so I think what it's going to do is going to unleash a new stage of creativity and entrepreneurship to actually allow more and more. It's kind of like what Instagram did with democratizing photography. Now everybody's like a decent photographer, right?
Everybody's a model. Everybody's a model.
Everybody's a model. Okay, so Pastor Mike truly pastors Gen Z. And so that's what it is, right? So it's democratized that. I mean, YouTube has democratized creation. So now everybody can have some level of an audience, right? And so now if AI can code for you, everybody's going to be on some level an app developer that can solve certain problems that maybe they couldn't solve without it because they didn't know any coders, they didn't know any engineers, they didn't know how to learn engineering themselves. What's your take, Zoe?
Yeah, I mean, Vance and I recorded an episode strictly on this, and I basically opened up the episode by saying, I'm terrified that robots are going to eat me. And by the end of the episode, he had my mind fully changed to now having an optimistic view and finding ways to integrate AI as a supplement and making sure that we have guardrails in place so that it's only as a supplement, not as the main driver, because that's where it gets dangerous. Is Vance, you obviously say it a lot better than I am, but whenever you ask it how to make it better moving forward, that's when you give it the scary level of autonomy to then become a monster that will eat you.
Yes, it's called singularity. I think we're a little bit further away from that than people think we are. There is caution to the wind on it. I'm not fully bullish on it, but this is where I think the importance of the local church is, right? The local church, I believe, should be the central point of society. We've seen it in history where when that's happened, a lot of times society continues to move forward morally, definitely. Society flourishes, right, in a lot of different aspects because the Bible's undefeated. The Bible has the best truths. The Bible has first principles. And so what I'm excited about and why we have started this podcast is we want to have these conversations so that we can break off fear and intimidation off of the church, the local church, to be able to embrace these technologies. Because God help us if the church is not embracing these and leading the way. I really don't want others to be doing that. And Pastor Mike, something that's been inspiring, and we can close with this, to me, is your incredible mixture of spiritual development and leadership alongside business, we've talked a lot about in this podcast already, but also even just civic engagement and finding your voice there. Obviously, between governments, local governments and national governments, understanding our history to inform where we're going and combining all the talents that God has given you, why do you think it's important to have a voice to engage your community civically as well?
If we don't, someone else is going to fill that void, and we can see where the country is heading. I think, Vance, I don't know if you know this, but I did a podcast interview of 8 mayoral candidates for the city and county of Honolulu.
I didn't see it yet. I need to catch up. Wow.
Yeah, it's a while back, and
okay.
I wanted to inform my church about who's running and here's the standard 5 questions I'm asking everybody, Republican or Democrat, it didn't matter. I even did that this past year with the governor's race, that I hit up all the gubernatorial candidates, and I asked them would they be willing to come on my podcast and be able to put that on YouTube, and that way our church would know what each person stood for. I think that it's important for us to know church history. We need to know American history, and in addition to just got hit by my microphone. Biblical history. We need to know world history. I think history is such a great teacher for all of us, and so this is when we know that if we can, we've been called to be in every sphere of society, every single sphere, from education to healthcare to arts and entertainment. Now you got to add athletics as maybe a separate mountain, because now athletes are very empowered today to speak their minds, and that's what they're doing. So maybe if there's 7 mountains, gates, spheres, streams, rivers, whatever we're calling them, but they're legit. I think the most important one is the church sphere, and everything else should be revolving around that. So people who are believers in Christ who are watching this podcast, we are called to be into every single sphere of society and make a difference. The challenge is, because politics is such dirty work, it can be dirty work, that a lot of Christians say, I'm not going to go in that because that's dangerous and I don't want to lose my integrity. And so it's getting filled with people who have different intentions. And so we should go into every single one. We should be in there, from the tech space to government.
Do not let fear rule if you're going to go into that space or not. Let's be led by the Holy Spirit. And ladies and gentlemen, such an honor to even say this, my friend, but also what I would consider one of my mentors, and one of the most incredible pastors that I know, Pastor Mike. We are so thankful for your nuggets of wisdom. We're so thankful for showing up in these conversations, and for whatever space that we're in that this reaches. We hope that you have just been so blessed. Pastor Mike, what are ways you would want people to connect with you, or anything that you would want to highlight? We want to make sure, we'll put it in the show notes as well, but anything that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I would. First of all, Vance, I want to highlight you, bro. You're the best, man. Hey, look at you. You and Kim are amazing. What you guys are doing with Vive, what you do with Overflow, and everything else that you've got going on, and your beautiful kids. Lisa and I would just we wish we lived closer together. We wish there was no Pacific Ocean.
That's okay. We'll come over there. That's okay.
Yeah. You need to come over. We need to come over. Remember, we're going to do an Innovate conference. We have to do one.
That's right.
We need to do one.
That's right.
We need to do one. So we're going to do that.
Okay.
I think the best place you can find me is mikekai.tv. That's the best place. It'll point you to whatever I do, and it'd be an honor just to say hi to anybody that wants to show up on that. And I'm grateful to be with you guys. Zoe, you're such a great podcast friend.
She is.
Yeah, I listen to you. You're such a great I don't want to call you sidekick, but such a great.
No, it's true. I'm Robin. He's Batman.
Yes, and you are really good at that. You're really good at that, and I really highly recommend this podcast. I can't tell you enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.